And we should be on Facebook now.
Cool.
Do you see us there? Are you looking?
Oh yeah.
I'm not
Yeah,
looking.
yeah,
There we go.
yeah.
Okay. Well, welcome
Uh,
everybody. This is Joe Milton with the ISPWP, the International Society of Professional Wedding Photographers. And today we get the distinct pleasure of talking to Paul Tansley all the way from Farnham. Is that right? Farnham, UK?
yep, just south. I'm in a tiny, tiny little village in the middle of nowhere. There's no major towns near me. It's like whenever you're SEOing your wedding photography, it's kind of like, oh, what's your nearest city? And it's like, yeah, the nearest city is about 20-minute drive, 20
Right.
miles drive, and we're not really near that.
Well, that's where I want to hear more about how you work and survive there. You're relatively close to London, though, right?
We're about an hour away from London, and about if it's an hour journey, but to really realistically shoot in London, it's about an hour and a half.
Oh, okay.
I don't do that many London weddings. I tend to stay away from London weddings. Luckily, in the countryside around us, there are hundreds of wedding venues. So we live on the border of two English counties, well, the border of three,
Hmm.
but Hampshire, Surrey, and Sussex. Hampshire and Surrey have a thousands of wedding venues around
Okay,
our area.
good.
So there's
And
plenty within 5 minute drive.
and you've been shooting for weddings for how long now, Paul?
I think it's 10 years. I lose track. Um,
So you
I
probably hit
think
most of
I,
the good venues then, right? You know them all by now.
um, I think we've shot at nearly all of them, but not all of them. It's amazing how you get an inquiry and you go, oh, I've not actually shot at that one
Yeah,
before.
yeah,
There's because you tend to, once you've shot at one, you tend to get repeats at that venue and you just
right,
miss out on the new venues because you haven't shot at that venue.
right.
It's kind of it's that catch 22 that
Yeah,
you can't blog that venue because you've never shot there. So you
yeah,
have to wait to get a wedding there and hope that you can blog that wedding and
yeah,
then get more work
yeah.
from it.
You love the question when the client says, uh, ask you
Have you
if
shot
you've
there
ever shot
before?
there before, and when the answer is
It's
no, they say, are you going to come ahead of time or a day before or a week before and scout it
yeah,
all out? I said, I've shot hundreds of weddings at every different
yeah.
venue. I'll be just fine. I totally get it if
My
some photographers like to do that and maybe get more comfortable. That's totally understandable, but it's a common
it's
question,
my usual response to that is we're documentary photographers. We
right?
specialize in an unposed system. So basically, it's all well and good knowing that you'll look really good if you stand near that window over there. Chances are you're not going to be stood over that window over there. So I'm going to have to work with wherever you're going to be stood.
Yeah.
That's what I have to work with. I always quote that when I was a fashion photographer, that we'd turn up at a fashion location shoot. You get 10 minutes to scout it. You just go, can we work this? And yeah, then you have to come up with something on the
Yep.
fly. You don't have to have ever been there. You look at what you've got in front of you. What's the light like? What's the situation like? With a fashion shoot, you compose it. With weddings, when you're shooting in a completely unposed style, well, you're going to have to deal with whatever is in front of you.
Yeah.
So it really doesn't matter that much if you've been there before. It's
Yeah.
convenient that you've seen it and you know
Sure.
where things are,
Sure.
and certain things repeat, but
Yeah.
it's a really thing of small
Yeah.
importance.
Especially for a documentary style.
Yeah,
Well, you talk about fashion. I really want to delve down into that because fashion photography is something that I rarely, little dipped in, very, very rarely. And it wasn't very much of part of my photography career at all. So let's go back to where you started. How did you get started in fashion photography? Did you do something before fashion photography, or how did you get started overall?
okay, so I was at school, about 18 years old. I really didn't know what I wanted to do in life.
Hmm.
My brother and I are both very smart. We were both at the age where computers were starting, and programming was starting. So I thought, oh, I'll go to university and study computer studies. Really didn't have much interest in it, but it was like that's what you do. You
Right.
go to university. So my brother's a year and a half older than me. He started to. He must have been at university at that time studying. I can't remember communications or something. He now works for Facebook HQ.
Wow.
so so he's done okay for himself. He's, he's pretty high up.
Yeah.
Um, I was always a bit of a I don't enjoy studying. I'm very high IQ, but I don't enjoy studying.
Hmm.
So I failed my exams at 18. Next year, what are you going to do? Okay, I'll have to retake my exams. So I went to a college of further education, signed up for the exams again, And one of the courses was an evening course that was totally unrelated, and it was what we call an O level, an ordinary level in photography. And my dad had always been interested in photography, and he'd shown us black and white printing to a certain extent. And I thought, you know what, I kind of fancy that. I fancy having a go at that. I'd always been around cameras. I'd always had cameras, but never processed them. That opened my eyes. 1 year doing that, it wasn't a great course. It was really rubbish, but that opened my eyes. Within the first few months of doing that, I saw a advert in Oxford. I used to live just south of Oxford, university town. And it was a guy called Mike Skipper, an American guy, running a 3-month course it was a little workshop. It was called the I think it was called the Oxford Photographers Workshop. And it was this little black and white lab where they had darkroom space for about 12 people, and they ran courses. And this guy was running a 3-month course, black and white fine art photography, as an exhibition course. The idea was you went on the course, you made exhibition prints. That guy just opened my mind to so many things. Yeah. Irving Penn, Richard Avedon. He was showing me these books and these pictures, and it was just like, oh my God, this is just unbelievable. I never knew photography could be like that.
Yeah.
And he introduced me to a version of the zone system, the Ansel zone system, which completely, again, was like, oh my God, blows my mind. You don't have to process this film. You can actually process your black and white film different times to get different tonality in the film, and then print it on different papers to get different tones come out of the paper.
It's a whole new world, whole new universe, right?
You can dodge them, burn, and instead of what you took, you can manipulate that to make it something even better, and really make the viewer watch what you want to do. Even simple things in black and white printing, like spotting white marks on a print. The first time he ever showed me that was like, oh, you get these dust marks when you make a print. If you put a little bit of pencil or grey paint over it, it disappears, and then your eye doesn't see it. And removing distractions from a picture so that your eye just saw the thing that you wanted, and that just blew my mind. That was like, wow.
But see, here's what I always find interesting is that you can go through that same experience, a whole different person, and it doesn't click, or they don't get it, or it doesn't appeal to them. But some people, it's like they're discovering, a whole new world, and it just, like you said, it opens up your mind, and you become engrossed in it, and you just dive into it feet first and go deep. Yeah. But some people would rather, go work at Facebook, So.
Yeah, completely. Yeah. It's like as with most things in life, both of us are older. When you get to a certain point in life, you realize that there's not one route for all of us. We're all completely different human beings, and different things appeal to you.
So how do you go from there to fashion photography?
Well, around the same time, the town I lived in is a very, very small town. It's full of English people. Nothing ever happens. It's full of English pubs, fights every night. You go down the pub, you have a fight, you go home. Around the same time, Italian students started to come to our town to learn English on a group tour for like the whole of the summer period. I was at an age where I was starting to go down the local pub, hanging out with my mates. All these Italians come along. It's like, well, they seem fun. Oh, lots of pretty girls. I'll hang out with them. Fell in love with Italians. All these Italians started to invite me to go to Italy, and they went, oh, Paul, come over. And they started to talk about fashion. Fashion was just at its kind of beginnings back then. It was where a lot of the designers like Armani, Trussardi were just beginning. And these guys, they were all rich students because they were all coming to England to study Italian. They were all well off, and they were like, Paul, come and stay with us. And I'm like, okay, that sounds great. So I used to go off to Italy and like go and stay with them. And that went on for about 5 years. And I had this period of about 5 years from about the age of about 18 to 23. Where I just visited Italy about 3 times a year and used to stay with different families for about 2-3 weeks at a time for about 3 times a year, and loved the culture, loved the people, loved the atmosphere. Well, near age, must have been age about 22, 23, I was staying at one of my best friend's houses, and her sister had this big brochure. And I'm like, what are you looking at? And she went, oh, this is a study for this school in Rome that I'm going to study graphic design. Oh, really? Okay, can I have a look? Don't know what graphic design is. Flicking through it, fashion photography, course in learning fashion photography. And I'm like, that's me. That's me.
Okay.
That's got my name on it.
Huh.
I want this. And I had a job back home just working for the government. I was working as a clerical officer,
Yeah.
just in an office. Funny side note that when I got that job, I was aged about 19. It was when the first IBM PC was launched.
Right.
And it was in the design office designing nuclear reactors. And my boss bought one of the first IBM PCs.
Wow.
I got the job. He gave me the PC and went, Paul, here's the manual. Here's Lotus 123, two 5.25-inch floppy disks.
Right.
Paul, go and learn this. You need to set up timesheets on spreadsheets and you need to work it. I've had it a week. I don't really understand it. Can you go and work it? And so I learned PC, so that's tied in with my computer background. But yes, so I saw this fashion photographers course and just went home that summer, and I went back to my parents. I just went, Mom, Dad,
guess what?
I'm going to give up my job. I want to go to Italy to study fashion photography. How does that sound to you? They're like, yeah, this is great. So, thanks.
Well, it sounds like whether they supported it or not, you went anyway, right?
They supported me 100%.
Nice.
They were kind of like, okay, this is what you want to do. We'll support you. Went back to university.
That's great.
It was a 3-year course. After 2 years, my teachers already realized that I was very, very I don't want to sound big-headed, but talented. I had a natural talent for photography. And they just said to me, Paul, okay, 3rd year is doing your portfolio. You don't need to do that. You've already got a portfolio. What you need to do is go and work for photographers. Go and find yourself a job assisting good fashion photographers. So at that point, my choice, this was in Rome. It was a bad choice to go to Rome. Beautiful place to live, beautiful place to go spend 2 years. Bad place to do fashion photography. Should go Milan, Paris, New York, or London. I was kind of like, I don't really like Milan. It's not a great place. And it's like, do I want to go to Milan? Not really. Do I want to go to Paris? Well, my French is okay, but it's not that great. I went to New York. I actually went to see Albert Watson's assistant because they had a job opening, and I spent 2 weeks in New York and went to see his assistant. Didn't get the job. They already had someone lined up. But I spent a couple of months seeing if I could get a job in New York. Eventually ended up, no, you've got to come back to London. Make do in London. So I went back home.
Okay. It's one of the top fashion capitals of the world, and it's right in your backyard. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I started assisting fashion photographers. Did that 5 years until I was 30 years old. I'd already been assisting while I was at college, so I knew the ropes. So I had about 7 years total assisting. 30 years old, I was on a job, and actually, that's why I was on a job doing Burberry's catalogue. And the photographer, we were on a boat in the Mediterranean, just off Barcelona, and the photographer got seasick, and the client was like, Paul, you've got to shoot this for us. The photographer was like throwing up over the back of the boat. And I'm like, okay. And this is with a Hasselblad. So I had to do a whole day's work on a Hasselblad, loading you up my own film, getting the art director to do the light readings, which he wasn't very good at.
Right.
The boat's going left, right, and center. The lights changing all over the place, and did this fashion shoot. And all of a sudden, they gave me the cover of the brochure and the first few pages. And it was like, okay, my first job.
And you think, now you know I can do this, right?
I can do this, and it was kind of like thrown into it. It's like, okay, it's time. My friend, who was a photographer too, that had finished assisting. He was previously an assistant. He said, Paul, it's time. You got to get out there, start taking your book about, get jobs. And so I started, age 30, started doing fashion. Did that for about 18 years in total.
Wow.
But nearer the end of the time, when was it? It was probably about 10 years into it. I got a job with the good old Daily Mail, an English newspaper, a freelance job. And it was at the age of digital starting. It was around 1999. And I did 2 film jobs for them. And then on, I think, the 3rd job, they said, oh, Paul, can you use a digital camera? I'm like, well, I haven't got one. They were like 12 grand each.
Right.
It's like, I don't have one. And they're like, oh, could you use one though? I said, well, if we can hire one, yeah, I'll give it a go.
It's got aperture, it's got shutter speed.
I'm computer literate.
Right.
I'll give that a go. I'll give that a try. And so we went off and hired I think it was a Kodak with the Canon body, a can't remember the model number of it.
Yeah.
This massive, great thing. It costs a fortune to hire.
Yeah.
Did my first shoot for the Daily Mail on digital.
Wow.
Next week they called up, said, Paul, can you do another shoot for us on digital? And it's like, yeah, okay. About 3 or 4 shoots in, Canon launched the D30.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay, I'm having one of those. Bought a D30. Then started to hire it back to the Daily Mail as a rental.
Oh, nice. That's smart.
You're
Good thinking.
You're paying for the rental anyway. I may as well hire this back to you. This is back in the days where editorial photography was actually you could make money.
Right. Right.
And then started to push magazines to use it as well, and they were very, very skeptical.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, "Well, this isn't good enough quality. This isn't good enough quality."
Mm-hmm.
Then the D60 came out, and it's like, "Well, this is 6 megapixels. You know what? This is ample for the dot printed magazine cover," and managed to get a cover with doing that. And so carried on like that. Eventually, the magazine industry started to dry up, though, as digital came about, as the internet came about.
Sure.
Work got less and less because magazines started to close. I used to shoot for a lot of wedding magazines. They all started to close down. There was no money in it.
Yeah.
Everyone was going digital online.
Yeah.
And so 10 years ago, it was like, I've got to do something else. You still with me?
Yep. Can you still hear me?
I lost the connection.
I can hear you. How about that? I can hear you. Am I back?
I got you back.
Okay, sorry about that. We're at the whims of the internet speed.
It's a little bit cracked. Yes.
Okay.
It's probably my end. Living in a village, you don't get fast speeds around here.
That's okay.
Well, was I? So so as that work started to dry up, I suddenly realized that, okay, what am I going to do? I better find my choices seemed to me I could do kids or weddings because they were the only two things you could just go into, rather than I was never really an advertising photographer. I didn't do a lot of advertising stuff, and I didn't really enjoy pushing myself towards that.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know what, I'll see if I can do weddings. And it just happened that Carol was running a wedding stationery company at the time. She was making wedding invitations on the side.
Okay.
She used to work for Wedding and Home magazine, one of my clients, as the art director there. So I just put an advert out saying, I'll shoot your wedding for like a cheap price, £500 or something. Did my first wedding. It was a nice wedding. Okay, I could do this. And then went back to leaving it for a while because the fashion picked up for a little while, for about a year or two. I got some more jobs. But then it came that, you know what, there's no more money in. I lost basically all my contracts when the Daily Mail told me that, Paul, will you cut your fee by 25% this year? Yeah. And I went, no.
Yeah, you said bye-bye.
So I can't afford to. That's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
You're barely giving me any work. No. Yeah. So then it was like full on going into weddings, and it's like get the website launched.
Yeah.
Push.
So it sounds like from starting weddings, you didn't go and like second shoot for an established wedding photographer or go and take a workshop or something. You just dove right in.
No, nothing at all like that. Yeah. Just went straight in. The thing is, I didn't feel like I needed to learn photography.
Right.
I was already a really experienced photographer by that stage.
Yeah.
You know, I must have been 45. I'd been a photographer over like 20 years, 25 years by that stage.
Yeah.
It's like I knew the photography. It was just how to market the work, and that's something I've never had to do before. With fashion, you just go and turn up at a magazine. You phone them up and say, "Can I turn up with my book? Show you my book. If they like you, they book you. If they don't, they don't."
Yeah.
With weddings, it was like, well, how do you actually get work? I don't really know. I understood how to create websites because I'd already been doing that with my fashion photography. So I kind of just created a website, and it was the early days of SEO. I didn't really know much about SEO, but I kind of just put it out there. You know, here I am, wedding photographer.
Yeah, and it worked.
It worked. I was offering very low prices, so I started doing weddings. And I never knock anyone that starts off offering low prices. You've got to get in there somehow.
Absolutely.
And a lot of people used to say to me, "Well, Paul, you're really experienced. You're like a fantastic fashion photographer. You should really use this. People should be paying a fortune to use you." And it's like, yeah, but I don't have any weddings to show them.
Right.
So I can show you my fashion portfolio, but I can't tell you I've shot a wedding.
Right.
And part of my personality is that I've never been a confident person in the sense of blowing my own trumpet to people.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I know I'm a good photographer, but I can't tell you I'm a really good photographer because I know really good photographers.
Yeah.
And I know how much better they are than I am.
Yeah.
So I know my level, but I know where I can improve all the time.
Yeah. Plus, I think there's just a natural comfort level moving into a different genre. So
yeah, completely.
Yeah. So if you weren't comfortable, I get it. You don't want to fake it too much. You want to be honest, and you want to present who you really are, and have a legitimate portfolio of weddings, right?
Precisely.
Yeah.
That's you've just nailed it on the head. That I'm not someone who can bullshit.
Yeah.
It's like I have to have that confidence to be able to present. I can't lie to my clients.
Yeah.
Even now, I find that I can't do that. I can't sell people something that I don't do. If I haven't when we were talking about earlier about having shot at a venue before, if you say, have you shot there? I can't go, oh yeah, I've shot there.
Yeah.
I can't do that. I just,
right.
I have to be honest. I have to say, no, I've not shot there.
Right.
It doesn't matter, but I have to tell you the truth that this is what I do. This is what I'm good at.
Yeah.
Book me for what I'm good at.
So how did you find the adjustment though? Because my limited exposure to fashion photography, I have a bit more experience in commercial or advertising photography, but it's a highly controlled environment where you have a location, you've got the lights, you got your assistants, you have the model, everyone's there, and you can do a lot of retakes and experiments.
Yeah.
And then moving to especially a documentary style wedding photography, it's a very different approach. So did you carry any of your fashion techniques or fashion knowledge into weddings?
Yes and no. So when I used to shoot fashion, I used to hate posing models. I must have, in my whole career of shooting fashion, I must have posed about 2 models. There were 2 models who didn't know how to model. All the other models just did what they did. And all I did was observe.
Yeah.
And I've always found that that's what I'm good at. I'm good at observation, of watching what a model's doing and knowing when to click that shutter, knowing when something works. I very much need to see it in front of me.
Okay, it sounds like you were not that stereotypical fashion photographer who's constantly talking to the model and, oh baby, make love to the camera, blah blah blah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I actually I have a friend who I always do that as a joke. That I go, oh yeah, baby, work it. Because that totally isn't what I used to shoot. I used to just let them get up. We talk, but I wouldn't pose them and tell them what to do.
Okay.
Because I never found that nice. I always used to find when you ask someone to do something, immediately it looked wrong. It used to happen in still life too. I used to do some fashion still lives, and say you have a hat and you want to photograph a hat. If you try and pose that hat on the ground, it always looks wrong. If you just throw it on the studio floor, go and take a picture of it, it looks right. Because it probably fell pretty right.
Yeah.
As soon as you start moving it, you notice every single thing that's wrong with how it is. And I think that's true with fashion, that if you ask a model to do something, it starts to look wrong, because if you tell them to put their hands in certain places, it doesn't look natural anymore. If they put their hands in an uncomfortable place and it looks weird, you can say, oh, try something different. But not by what to do, because that's awkward. I think it makes approach to weddings is very similar, that you don't need to tell someone to stand in a certain way, because what they will do normally is probably beautiful. You just need to spot when it's beautiful.
Right. So
does that make sense?
Yeah, and I'm thinking too, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, I think around that time, documentary photography was becoming more well-known, more popular. Guys like Dennis Reggie, that whole thing was going on at that time. So
the funny thing,
go ahead.
The funny thing was, Carol used to work for Wedding and Home magazine, which was one of the top wedding magazines in the country. We met a long time before that, but she got a job on a wedding magazine. That magazine, as she was art director of it, she used to have to do the real life wedding section. She really loved the guys sending in documentary photography. So these guys were sending in 35mm black and white documentary photography, and she was one of the first people in the UK to start using that and promoting
Interesting.
that. there's a photographer called Ian Johnson, and he's actually got a quote that somewhere on the web out there in Google where it says Carol Herning, now Carol Tansley, was the start of this. She was one of the people that launched this.
That's awesome.
So I used to see this because so when I started doing weddings, I was like, oh, I could, if I have to do weddings, I'm doing it like that.
Yeah.
Because
that's what I was wondering.
Can't do it.
Yeah, I thought if you start doing weddings, you may have had like the preconceived notion that you have to do the very traditional type of weddings that has been done for the last 100 years, right? So
I had in my head the high street photographer in the little town I grew up in, Ivorfields, did the wedding photography, owned the photography shop.
Yep.
I grew up with that shop for 20 years. That's what I thought wedding photography was. My mother used to joke, "Oh, Paul, you should do wedding photography." It's like, absolutely no way on earth am I ever doing wedding. I'm a fashion photographer. Yeah. I'm like the god of photography. We're like so high up in that spectrum of photographers. Wedding photography, no way. And then I even had a fashion photographer friend at the same time. He started to mix with this group doing reportage wedding photography, and it was like, oh, yeah, I could do that. If I ever go into wedding photography, I could do that. Yeah. And the first wedding I ever shot, I shot like that. I shot in a completely unposed way. It was like I didn't ask people to do anything. I just followed them around. And funny enough, I took Carol with me. Carol was my assistant on the first job because I didn't want to go alone.
Wow,
I don't know what I'm doing. Carol, here's a camera.
So she's been with you from the very beginning of the whole wedding photography, from the very beginning. That's great.
Absolutely. And it was like, let's just go and shoot this. We don't have to ask them to do anything. We did some portraits. That was kind of posed. But for most of the day, no, we're just going to follow you. Please just do whatever you're doing. And I don't want to ask you to do something. Yeah. I don't want to ask you to smile at the camera. Yeah. I'd rather you just did what you were going to do.
So how I guess extreme of a position do you take on the documentary approach? Because I know that there's a spectrum, right? Some people will say they're documentary, but they have no problem like moving things or just making like suggestions for people to move better or closer to the light. Or where do you draw the line? Or do you draw a line?
I kind of hate the term documentary, because it so doesn't describe what we do. I far prefer thinking about it as posed and unposed.
Okay.
And I like to think that what we do is unposed. So, like 1 in 1,000 weddings would I ever ask anyone to move. If something, let's say there's a pair of shoes and they're sitting on a table, and I think, okay, I should do a still life of the shoes. If they really look bad where the table is, or there's let's say there's a plastic bag by them, you know what? I'll move the plastic bag. It's not that big a deal.
Yeah.
I can move the plastic bag.
Yeah.
But what I don't really want to do is get into the whole move the shoes, go and put them up. I have a personal hate of ring shots where the rings are placed somewhere like a still life. It's just like out of a catalogue. For me, that has no emotional connection whatsoever. You could have done that picture 3 days after the wedding, 3 days before the wedding. It has no relevance to the wedding because it's a picture of nothing. If I can get the shoes on the girl, on the bride, I'll do that even better.
Okay.
So if she's putting on the shoes and I can crawl on the floor and get that shoe on her foot, that's an even better picture.
I think too. It's a matter of finding the right client, because I would have clients who got it and they were very emphatic. They were maybe even more hardcore than I was, to say, I don't want you to tell us what to do. I don't want you to interact with us at all. I like the way you shoot like that. But you have other clients too that want the more hands-on, more creative. Not that they can't be creative, but more, I guess, posed or doing the ring shots, or let's do something special with the dress shots. Yeah. There are clients who want that, and I would just tell them, I'm the right photographer for you, right?
Yeah. We still get that occasionally.
Sure.
You know, we advertise our business to try and dissuade those people from coming our way.
Yeah.
But you still occasionally get the person who says, I had one recently actually, and this my classic is when they ask for the photo of you on the stairs. Oh, can I get a picture of me on the stairs? And it's like, well, why? Why are you on the stairs? Oh, because I've seen a picture like it. And it's like, yeah, but is that the same staircase as your staircase?
Yeah.
Is it the same dress? Are you 6 foot tall like that model was? no, why are you doing this picture? It's like, you're never going to look like that, whatever you do.
Yeah.
And I actually had a wedding, it was only about 2 months ago. And I put the picture on Facebook recently. It was the last blog post I put up, actually. And this bride said, "Oh, could you do a picture of us dancing in the hallway which is basically a bar area?"
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Well, I don't really kind of do these pose shots, but why don't you send me a picture that you've seen that you think is this what you like?" And she sent me a picture, and it was like, "Oh my God, that's really bad. That's why are you asking me to do?"
Yeah.
But you know what? There's some features there that I might be able to try something, and
Yeah.
I'm a professional. I've done this a long time. I'm an ex-fashion photographer.
Yeah.
Let's be nice. Let's give it a try. We did it. I absolutely love the result of the shot. The shot of her dancing, spinning in the hallway is beautiful.
Right.
It's
and now you have a happy client.
I have an extremely happy client, and I've also given myself a bit of a slap to go, "Paul, you can do this." You know, I do. So because she also, the other good thing was she worked with me. I explained that the reason I don't like doing shots like that is because you have to give me 10, 15 minutes of your time on your wedding day to do that picture.
Right.
When I used to shoot fashion, if I was doing a picture, we'd have an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Do you really want to spend an hour doing a picture on your wedding day? I'd rather you were with your guests and your family.
Yeah. Although some clients want that and are happy to do it, you know.
If someone's willing to do it, so long as they respect that it will take them time,
right.
I'm cool with it.
Yeah.
That's why.
I know in some markets, like in Australia and in other places, they specifically set aside 2, 3, 4 hours to go and do portrait shots, and the guests go and either go home and come back to the reception, or they just wait at the reception for hours, and that's part of the norm. That's what they expect, right?
One of the most ironic things is Carol and I got married in June.
Yeah.
And we used D2 photography in Tuscany, Donatello and Damiano. Mm-hmm. We spent about 2.5 hours with them doing portraits.
Right, there you go.
And the reason was because we really wanted some portraits that were shot in Tuscany.
Yeah.
And they said to us, "Well, if you want those, you're going to have to kind of drive for the thing that you want. We want some tall cypress trees. You're going to have to drive for that." And it's like, you know what? We understand that. We'll do it. Yeah. The rest of the day is documentary, but we will give you that time.
Yeah.
So long as people understand that, that's absolutely cool. Yeah. It's getting clients who don't understand. They think that because of modern photography on people's phones, they think a group shot is just stand there, smile, click, done. And it's like, no, it's going to take you 3 minutes to do that group shot because it takes time just to even get the people in front of you looking at the camera.
Yeah.
It's just because you are a good photographer does not mean I can pick up my camera, go click, and it's a good picture.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way.
Right.
If I was shooting fashion, I've got a beautiful model in front of me, beautiful hair and makeup, beautiful clothes. I don't pick up the camera and go click and it's done. I pick up the camera and click about 100 times.
Yeah.
And then I pick the best picture from that. And so if you're going for a shot where you're planning it, you have to dedicate the time to it. Yeah. Whereas everything else, your natural shots during the day, they come as they come. It's like you can improve them as a couple by slowing things down. Don't run down the aisle if you're having confetti. Don't run at me during the confetti. Like, walk slowly. Look like you're having fun.
Right.
But I don't want to stop you as you're doing that and go, "Oh, hold on a second. Stop there. Smile. Oh, could you just do that again?" Because that to me is like, no, if I miss it, I miss it. That's my job to capture it.
Yeah. And I think your job in any documentary or Unposed tech photographer's job is to just make sure you've communicated clearly to your clients that this is how you shoot.
Yes.
This is what they're going to get. So I think where we always have problems between photographer and client is if there's a miscommunication or there's a misunderstanding of what's going to happen. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We've had clients like that in the past that they booked us, and then nearer the wedding, you realize they start asking you, "Oh, can you do a picture of me like this with the back of my dress all spread out?" And it's like, you don't really do things like that. Yeah. If your bridesmaid spread out your dress, I'll take a picture of it.
Right.
I'm not going to ask you to stand there though and get the back of the dress spread. It's just not what I do. It's like, where did you see a picture like that I've shot?
Yeah.
I've shot maybe one of those in my life in a specific location where it works.
Yeah.
Everything else, why would I do that? You're getting, it's a classic, a bride gets ready in a conference room at a hotel.
And
then they spread out the
lighting, yeah.
Yeah, and then they spread out the dress like you're going to take this magnificent shot of the dress, and it's like, there's a whiteboard behind, a projector, office chairs. Why do you think this will look good? It just won't look good.
Right.
Let me get a picture of the dress later when it's just doing its thing and being a dress.
Yeah. So when you're approaching a wedding, say you're going into a wedding, it's a wedding day, you're getting ready, you're coming in. What do you think is like the most important thing in your mind to create good images on that day?
I think being in the right frame of mind. I think shooting lots, not being afraid to just overshoot, constantly being observant, trying not to put the camera down. It's so easy. Even for me, I've been shooting a long time. I still put the camera down, and it's like, no, keep the camera up.
Yeah.
Watch what's happening. Even in the last few years, I've learned that, say, after the wedding speeches, used to put the camera down. Wedding speeches are finished, put the camera down.
Yeah.
Last maybe 2-3 years, I've realized, no, you just wait there, because now is when the magic happens. It takes a few moments, but all of a sudden, everyone clears, and then the hugs start.
Yeah.
And people come up and start hugging.
The reactions.
That's magic. Yeah. That's the magic of that moment. And I've second shot for a few people, and it's interesting watching how they handle a similar situation. And it's like, it very much reinforces what I think. No, just keep your eye on the ball. Try and always stay alert to, because you're not posing it, you don't know when that magic's going to happen.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're going to miss it. You're going to miss so much stuff. It's like every wedding, I miss so much stuff. You see something happen, you think, oh, there's no way on earth I'm going to get over there to do that picture. But the things that you do get are more magical because you do get, and they're real. And to me, that capturing those real moments is just everything.
Yeah.
When you capture a human being themselves, completely unaware of the camera, interacting with either their partner or with a member of the family or just even with a friend, when they're just laughing, it's when you get like clients that go, oh, I don't like laughing, I don't like smiling. It's like, yeah, but everyone laughs, and when you laugh without thinking about having your picture taken, a human being just lights up.
Yeah,
there's something about that. Your human face just lights up, and when I look back at their pictures, I smile, I laugh because I can see the emotion. So if it has that effect on me, the effect for them must be magical.
Yeah,
and it comes back to that, what we were saying earlier about memory triggers. When they see that, hopefully that triggers that memory of, oh my God, I remember what someone was saying or how I felt at that moment.
Yeah, I always love that about wedding photography too, and talking to wedding photographers, because when you get that shot, even after shooting weddings for 10, 15, 20 years, you get the shot. And you get excited about it, and you go, I got it. Could be right, because a lot of the shots that you're taking during the day are okay, or they're doing what you're contracted to do. But every once in a while, that magic happens, and it's something that you can still get excited about. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I think that's what keeps you being a photographer. Apart from being useless, probably doing anything else, it's that magic, it's that buzz you get when you get it right, and you know you got it right. Not even necessarily during when you shot it. Sometimes it happens when you shot it. Other times it can happen when you're looking in your digital darkroom, when you're in Lightroom, and you pull up that image and you just go, oh my God, wow, oh my God, look, all the elements, and then you realize that a little bit of processing, you can bring out those elements. And you just realize you've got perfection, that you could not have arranged all those elements. If you were doing the fashion shoot, you couldn't have arranged all those elements. You'd have spent years trying to arrange those elements. And yet they've all come together, and it just works.
Yeah, and like you said, the only way you can get a higher percentage of those shots is if you are always on. You can't.
Yes.
You can't. You just can't relax. It's one of the exhausting things about the professional. Why some people don't keep doing it, because they just get so tired. It's constant mental. It's mental energy. You're mentally always on all the time.
Yeah. It's funny. Carol and I, the first few years, we used to get really tired, but in the last few years, we actually don't get as tired. I think because I think you're better prepared. You know that that's what the deal is. So it doesn't tire you out so much, because you kind of know that that's what you're doing, and even though you are always on, you have a bit more inclination to moments that are more likely to happen.
Yeah, yeah.
Like possibly we used to turn up at the wedding and you were waiting for the moments first thing in the morning, and it's like, you know what? Not a lot happens the first thing in the morning. you might get a little hug shot, but
right.
Just wait a bit. Do some kind of scene setting shots. It'll come.
Yeah.
Kind of just warm up. Let it warm up. Don't try and do 3,000 pictures first thing, because it probably isn't going to ever get used.
Yeah. 3,000 pictures of the makeup going on. Okay, that's enough.
Exactly.
So you talked about finding magic in the post processing, and I know you do primarily black and white, or do you all black and white? What's your approach to black and white?
So a lot of things I show online are all black and white, and a lot of my friends think they treat me as like, oh, you're the black and white guy. Yeah, we love your black and whites. Actually, most weddings I deliver is probably about 25% to 30% black and white.
Oh.
Most of it's in color.
Okay.
And my philosophy for that is that when I find something that works, I love black and white. So my introduction to photography when I was age 18, 19 was black and white. And that inspired me. That whole zone system thing inspired me. And I work in the digital darkroom in exactly the same way. I'm trying to produce a black and white where you've got all those tones and you've got that tonal variation, and you can manipulate the image to make the viewer see what I want to see. And I find black and white images, you can do that far more than a color image. You can tweak a color image a slight bit. In black and white, the world's my oyster. I can completely reverse a black and white and make it how I want it to look in post.
Yeah.
Even if the light was perfect, it's even better, because it's there for you. But I'll still manipulate it. Yeah. But if the light wasn't perfect, then you can play with things and bring things out. So because the black and whites take me longer and more time, I'm not going to make everything black and white. It takes too long.
Well, things are just, if you're a perfectionist, Paul.
I'm a perfectionist. I should have mentioned this at the start.
Right.
I am.
You don't just want to. You just want to slap on a generic action on the images and just publish them out, right? You got. I get this. I get the impression you really take your time, like too much time.
Too much time is probably true.
Yeah.
It's like trying to explain whenever I hear people about how fast they process, I'm like, really? It's like my images take ages because I can't let it go. It's part of my makeup to make sure that is perfect, and even when it's perfect, I might go back to it and tweak it a little bit further. And I can totally understand the commercial side of that's not a good thing. You should actually just go good enough, throw it out the door. But it's my personality. That's how I was built. I want things to be perfect and not only for the client. I want it perfect for me. It's like when I'm doing a really good image, I'm doing that image for me, not for the client.
Right.
It's like I want that thing to look so darn good that I'm happy with it.
Yeah.
I don't really, it's not care, but it's like the client's secondary. It's like they'll love it because they'd have loved it in color. They'd have been absolutely happy with it in color.
Well, have you ever had a client that wanted like 100% of the images delivered in black and white? I had like a one or two. But...
No, I have the occasional client who says, I love your black and white. And so I know that they're more open to it. And I have the occasional client that I always offer that if at the end of the wedding, if I deliver you something in black and white and you really want to see it in color, ask me. I'm a nice guy. I'll give you a few images in color and swap them back again. But as long as you understand that the reason I made that black and white was because it looked a lot better in black and white. I wouldn't have spent all that time making it black and white if I didn't think I was giving you the best image. But if you want to see it in color, fine. I'll do a color version. It's your wedding, as long as it's not hundreds. And I refuse to batch the whole lot. That's beyond me. I know photographers who like to batch it all black and white, all color, and I just can't. I can't do that. Why would I do that? Black and white isn't the press of a button. Black and white is you need to get in there and get your hands dirty and manipulate that image. If you're not, it's not really black and white. It's just it's a picture without color in it. It doesn't really have any benefit to it.
Yeah. What about your shooting style? Auto or manual?
Oh, so this is a big one for me.
I thought it might be.
I've had massive arguments in the past.
Oh, it's a hot topic. It's a hot button.
So I think if you're a photographer starting out, you should shoot manual because you need to understand what those settings are doing, why those settings do certain things, why you choose certain settings.
Do you think a new photographer should shoot a wedding in manual?
That's a difficult one. I'd probably not. I'd probably say, you know
So
what,
higher error rate.
Yeah, I think for modern photography, I think practice in manual, shoot it auto because at least you'll get a result.
Yeah.
It's far too easy to walk out of a church. It's pitch black. You walk out. It's bright sunshine. You're going to mess up.
Right.
Even
we've all done it.
I went to foundation workshop 2 years ago, and they made me shoot manual on the second day. And I walked out of a house into daylight. I completely forgot to change my settings because I'm so used to relying on the auto. It's like, you know what, I can't think that fast.
Yeah.
And so the thing for me about shooting auto or shooting semi-auto, let's say, because I never shoot fully programmed,
right,
is once you understand the good holy trinity of you have three choices for light. You have your aperture, your shutter speed, and your sensitivity, your ISO, your film speed, whatever you want to call it. Modern photography, the only thing you can do when you ever, in any given light situation, there is X amount of light. Unless you are adding light by a flash, LED, whatever, that X amount of light is fixed. Therefore, that holy trinity is fixed. Those three things interrelate. You can't decide, I'm going to shoot at this aperture, this shutter speed, and this ISO. Because as soon as you choose one of them, you've also chosen kind of the other two. If you want a standard exposure, you can choose to make the image lighter or darker, but that's not shooting the standard exposure. That's a whole different scenario.
Yeah.
So this whole thing about shooting manual and you can choose everything and you've got full control. Well, you walk into a room and it's really, really dark. Well, you're going to open your lens up fully to let's say, I don't know, f1.4, let's say. It's really dark. Okay, well, I need a shutter speed, though, to freeze people moving because otherwise I'm going to get blur. So humans moving, my experience is about 2/50th is good. Anything slower, people are going to start to blur a little bit. So you got 1.4, 250. Oh, now I'll choose my ISO. No, you don't. You don't get to choose the ISO because the ISO is determined by the other two factors you chose. You're stuffed on your ISO. You've got the ISO that you're left with.
Yeah.
Do you like the ISO? No, I don't like it. It's too high. Well, what are you going to do about it? Because you can only change one of the other two. Well, you're at max and aperture. You're 250. If you're only slow, you get blur. Your only other option is to add light. Do you want to add light? For most of my photography, I don't want to add light. I want to shoot what's in front of me.
Or force your subjects to freeze so they're not moving.
Yeah, please move really slowly at this moment in time. So the whole fact is that you don't really get to choose those three things. If you want to make the image lighter or darker, well, you can use EV exposure adjustment. So if you want it lighter, overexpose it by a stop, underexpose it by a stop, do whatever you want, but you can't really alter those three things. And when you do the EV, all you're doing, in fact, is altering the ISO, which you didn't have any choice about anyway.
Yeah.
And on a modern camera, the only reason you wouldn't want to shoot higher ISO is if it's dark and you get grain.
Right.
Well, if it's dark, it's dark. Unless you're adding light, you cannot change the fact that it's dark. I was reading a Facebook post the other day and somebody put, I had to go into a house and it was really dark. Well, yeah, it's dark. What do you want?
Surprise!
I mean, my ISO went up. The images are noisy because it's dark.
Right.
That's what happens.
You can't escape. You can't escape physics, right? It's physics.
Exactly. It's simple physics, and to my mind, once you understand that physics, I don't understand wanting to choose those things because the camera can calculate them far faster than I can calculate them.
Yeah.
All I need to choose is I want to choose my aperture. I want to know what depth of field I've got.
Right.
I want the camera to have a minimum shutter speed to freeze motion. So you set it at minimum 250th. If it needs to go slower, it will. It's clever enough that if the ISO is at maximum, it will go slower shutter speed.
Right.
You can go with that.
Right.
The ISO, I want to keep low, but at the same time, I really don't care what it is because if it has to go high, it has to go high because I can't open up my lens anymore.
Yeah. Although the nice thing is with the modern cameras, the ISO is so much better than it was 5, 10 years
Oh,
ago. It's just ridiculous. Yeah.
I've 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 got some film canisters up there behind me
Yeah.
with FP4 and HP5 in it.
Yeah.
Your film choice on film was: do you want to shoot 100 or do you want to shoot 400?
Exactly.
If you shoot 400,
Exactly.
you're going to get
Yeah.
right.
Right.
We'll shoot 100.
Yeah.
Nowadays, come on. I mean, you can whack it up to 3,200, no problem. 6,400, no real problem. Even 12,800. Modern programming added a little bit of noise reduction.
Yeah.
It was dark anyway.
Right. You'll get a usable image. Yeah.
When you compare that with what HB5 was in black and white film years ago, oh my God, it's like it's a different league.
Yeah.
It's like, why are you worried about this?
Right.
You could go to some crazy ISO, it would still be fine.
Yeah. Well, back then there was a whole other set of skills and techniques if you wanted to manipulate that kind of stuff in the darkroom, right?
Absolutely.
But now you just spin a dial on your camera and you're good to go.
Yeah. And so on my camera, the other thing about shooting fully like a semi-auto method is I now use Sony's. So I'm on a Sony A9. I've got 3 Sony A9s. You can see the exposure through the camera. So when you're using EV adjustment, you can see exactly what it's doing. You can see whether you want it lighter or darker.
Nice, yeah.
There's so little guesswork. And if you're doing a raw process as well, I always shoot raw and process the raws. That raw has so much leeway. All I want the raw to do is give me a working negative so I can work with that.
Right.
I don't need to go, 2 days after the shoot, I don't need to go back to it and go, oh, you'd have been better exposing that one stop lighter.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any difference. I can work with it. It's so near enough that as long as I've got a good range of tones in that image, I can work with it.
How long have you been shooting in Sony?
About a year and a half, 2 years. No, more than that. It's nearly 2 years now.
Okay.
I think I bought my phone for Sony about this time 2 years ago.
What were you before Sony?
Canon.
So you dumped all your Canon gear?
We still have a Canon 5D4 and a load of Canon lenses because Carol still shoots on the 5D4.
Okay.
Carol's totally untechy and doesn't. She's stubborn. So she doesn't want to learn how to use the Sony.
And I know she's not there to defend herself, but let's talk about Carol. So do you guys always shoot together? Or do you shoot solo sometimes? Or how does that work?
I shoot solo sometimes, basically when brides can't afford us both. So we keep it as an option. So I'm a working photographer. I need the work. I can't afford not to turn down work. So so we always give it as an option that this is our price for both of us. However, if you wanted to book me solo, here's a price a little bit cheaper to booking me solo.
Okay.
But especially over the last year, we've really tried to push it that we really want you to book us both, because that's when we give the best service. Even though it works, Carol's got a full-time job, so doing weddings is an extra workload for her.
Yeah.
But she enjoys the creative outlet from that. She enjoys being part of the business and creating wedding pictures.
Okay.
So we try and push both of us.
And what's the workflow? I know there's other photographers out there that some work solo, or sometimes they have a second, or sometimes they always work as a couple. In terms of the workflow, does Carol shoot, and then do you do all the post-production?
I do all the post, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Carol has no involvement at all. Occasionally I will show her pictures. I might ask her to help me color certain section, like if I've got maybe 10 portraits, and I go, can you just help me pick which one's best, because I'm blinded. They're all good.
Yeah.
But what am I missing? What can you see better than I can see? Generally pass slideshows in front of her, just say, look, this is the slideshow I'm going to send them. What do you think? She might comment like, oh, I don't like that picture in there.
Okay.
Or swap it out. But I'd say 95%, 98% of the work is I'm doing all the processing.
Okay.
She simply doesn't have time to get involved in it.
Sure. And some people just don't like to do it. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, I think she'd actually enjoy certain parts of it. But she works 5 days a week, so it's just impractical. It's like it takes me a good 3 to 4 days to process a wedding, so there's just no time to do it.
Yeah. Would you consider yourself a bit of a control freak that we wouldn't want her to do it because you'd like to have your hands on?
I don't. It's weird. I don't think I'm a control freak. I think I'm a perfectionist. I know I want it done really well the way I want it done.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's a control freak in the sense that I guess it is in certain ways. I think it's just my perfectionism. I want it to look right, and I know how I want it to look. And I was culling a wedding yesterday. We had two pictures very similar. Actually, I was making a slideshow, and it was their first look slideshow. I had to choose between two pictures. One was Carol's, one was mine. And she was like, "Oh, well, that one, the bride looks better than that one." I'm like, "Yeah, but I just don't like that picture for some reason, and the other one I think is stronger, even if the bride doesn't look as good." And I went with my decision.
Yeah.
I overruled it simply because, like, I'm doing it. I'm gonna pick this one. But it's really interesting to have that. It's really interesting. I think a lot of photographers don't having someone else to ask. That a lot of photographers have to rely on that of things, whereas I've got an extremely talented art director to look at things and go, "Well, have you seen this? Have you seen that? That picture's better than that one because it's got more impact."
Yeah.
And she will see things that I've missed because I'm just looking from my perspective. So I think that's very, very useful.
Yeah, sounds like a good partnership with different skills coming to the table there. So it's a unique situation.
Yeah, I mean, definitely our backgrounds, because she's been an art director on fashion magazines and also art director on a wedding magazine. Whenever we shoot and work together, we bring a different element to it because we definitely see things that we can literally stand. It's like the classic when couples talk about having a second photographer, they think it's all about, you can cover the groom's getting ready. And It's like, well, it's not really about that. It's like, we can both shoot you getting ready, the bride. We will take different pictures. We can literally stand right next to each other.
Yeah.
And you've probably done this yourself with photographers. You can stand a group of photographers next to each other and all shoot the same thing.
Yeah.
You will all shoot it differently.
Yeah.
You might, out of a group of 10 of you, you probably get about 7 people shoot the same thing. And then 3 will shoot, let's say another 2 will shoot it different. And then 1 will just shoot it in a completely different way that none of you thought about.
Yeah.
And it's that skill of a photographer. We see things differently. You just don't all see things the same way.
Do you coordinate with her in terms of how to approach the wedding, or do you just let her go and do her thing, or is there say, okay, I'm going to shoot this long, I want you to shoot it wide, that kind of a thing?
We kind of let each other go our own way. Okay. I let her do her own thing. I've second shot for people, for friends, and they've gone, "Oh, can you cover this long?" And I'll shoot it wide and whatever. So when Carol and I work together, I don't need to tell her. I'd much prefer she just did her own thing. It doesn't matter because I will do my thing, she will do her thing.
Okay.
I try and get her to understand. I mean, it's been 10 years we've been working together, so I try and get her to understand that there are certain things I need her to cover. Like if I'm in a church and I'm at the front and a speaker gets up to speak and I'm behind them, please come forward and get that speaker.
Yeah.
I cannot see that speaker's face and I cannot move. Please come forward and get this.
Do you got the little wireless microphone ear thing?
No.
Hand signals? Or?
Yeah. It's usually me just scowling.
Yeah, right. Well, you've known each other for so long, it's like ESP. She can read your mind, right?
Yeah. She knows my look.
Okay. Let's look at some pictures here. See, I'm going to share screen. Start sharing. And then, let's see, going to go to share screen. Okay, so you should be able to see the image there?
Yep.
Okay, good. It worked. Let's look at some pictures and maybe just kind of talk me through what we're looking at.
Okay.
And why, because I have, just so people know, I always have the photographer select some images. I don't select them. I want you to bring your photos and talk about them. So now's your chance.
So this is one of my favorite images from a few years back. It's a very ordinary wedding at a local golf club. There's nothing special about this wedding. It's not a glamorous location or anything. Really lovely couple. They're still friends with me on Facebook.
Nice.
The thing I like about this, the groom is giving a speech to the bride. The bride has turned around. She's in beautiful window light that is just completely illuminating her face. Her father is behind her. You can just see his eye. His hand is on her shoulder, comforting her as he's reading out the speech. And then you can just see in the center middle, she's actually playing with her wedding ring.
Oh, nice.
And I just love those elements coming together. That it's just the look on her face, even looking at it now, is just pure, absolute joy.
Yeah, it's genuine. It's totally genuine.
That's not just, oh, smile for the camera. This is completely in love with her husband and so happy in that moment in time. And to have to be able to capture something that is so real, that lasts forever of that moment is just magical to me.
Yeah, you were in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, completely. You know, I've gone right behind the speeches there. There's like I'm literally behind probably his mum and dad, and like I'm just squeezed in, trying to get a different angle on it. And we generally shoot speeches either on our knees in front of the top table, or we'll try and get to the side and look down the table like that. And this time I actually like squeezed in just slightly behind, and just I mean. It's one of those, as I was saying earlier, you can't plan that shot. How can you plan that she's going to play with the ring and Dad's going to put arm on the shoulder?
Yeah.
You know, I shot a lot of frames of that. I probably shot 20, 30, if not more frames of that, trying to move around the speech to try and get the angle right so they all tied up. And you just get magic when it all comes together.
As part of your post-processing, do you do any cropping, or do you always just leave it as you shot it?
I nearly always crop. I always shoot slightly at a piss, so it's usually always slightly twisted. So I like getting my verticals straight. I'll always tidy up the edges if things are unnecessary in the frame. I never crop outside the format. One of the things Mike Skipper, my early teacher when I was 18, taught me was even in the original darkroom, film darkroom, if you always crop the same format, nobody knows you cropped.
Right.
So I never do weird crops. It's always the same crop. Just tidy it up, bring it in a little bit, and then I'll always manipulate the image. So for that image, I actually re-manipulated this today. You know, this is an old image, but I noticed his back was slightly light, and I just darkened it down slightly. Just darkened brush, and it's probably got little masks going on. I don't know how many masks this image has got, but it's got little things just to accentuate what I want you to see. I want you to be looking at her face, the speech, Dad's eye, not the other things in the image.
And I think too, and we'll see this, I think, in some of your other images too that we're going to look at, is your experience and background in the darkroom, I think, enhanced at least my approach, and probably yours as well, your approach to editing a photo, because you had the hands-on darkroom editing experience, and now you say, I'm going to make that translation over to Photoshop, or whatever it is.
Yeah. I think when I was thinking about this today, actually, that modern photographers that have never been in a darkroom, when they do black and white, it's no wonder they just press a button. Because if you've never experienced what dodging and burning was and why you did it, you can deal with that now. But unless you know those tools and understand why you were using those tools, even like I can remember, again, one of the early things I learned was burning in the edges of a print. You'd always burn the four edges of a print using a bit of card by about 5-10%. You just give a wave on all the edges to darken, to give it a slight vignette to the picture. You did that on every print when you did a black and white print. A modern photographer, how are they going to know that? They've never had to do that. Right. They just they take the picture, it comes up on screen, you press the black and white button, it's black and white, and then they go, well, what do I do now? It's black and white. Right. How do I know to do anything else?
Yeah.
And again, if you've never looked at the zone system and never done that with film, about playing around, and I always love Int'l Adams' book, The Negative, about the 3 books, the series of 3 are just fantastic, where you learn about how to create tonal variation in a black and white film and then print. If you've never done that, how would you know to do that in digital? You know, you can look at the curve and things, and people can say, "Oh, you play with the curve," but you don't really know what you're doing unless you've. Right. I think that background really helps you.
I agree. Well, here's the only color photo that you submitted.
1995.
Nice.
So this was one of my first ever covers for a teenage magazine that Carol just happened to work for.
Okay.
Off the top of my head, I can't remember if this was a test or not. I don't actually think I shot this for the magazine. I think I shot this as a test shoot. And one of my first magazine jobs after Burberry's was I shot a really nice fashion test, took it into Carol had them. I gave the prints to Carol, and Carol took them into a magazine and just was looking at them. And the art director of the magazine at the time came over and looked over her shoulder and went, "What are these?" And oh, these are Paul's. It's just tests. He said, "Oh, can we buy it?" And so they bought the shoot and put it as a full page fashion spread. And I can't remember if this was from that or from the next shoot I did with them. It might have been another test or something. I really can't remember. It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, it brings back fond memories of this style of lighting, especially
Sure.
that
Studio,
for this.
heavy duty studio lighting.
But it's studio, but this is ultra clean lighting.
Mm-hmm.
So one of my favorite lighters of all time was Patrick de Marchelier, who was doing Italian Vogue back when I was at college. And I remember discussing with one of my tutors at the time, how does he get that light? And he said, you need a lot of light. And I'm like, what do you mean a lot of light? And it took me years to understand it. And during my assisting years, I worked with a French photographer, Christophe Coutner. He used big panel lighting. And then I was lucky enough to work with, I did a few shoots with Annie Leibovitz.
Nice.
And she used a very similar technique. One shoot we did was a portrait in the basement of a hotel. We did a portrait, and she created this wall of light, the wall must have been about 20 feet long with about 8 flash heads behind it. And it was this whole thing about lots of light. And that image is created using a lot of light on a huge panel. And it just gives this beautiful, beautiful cleanness to the face.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned in all my fashion years to make women look beautiful, you want clean light.
Oh.
To make a guy look beautiful, you want really dirty light. You want shadows and ugliness. Bring out all the wrinkles. That's what makes a guy look good. For a woman, the cleaner the better.
Yeah.
And the more you can clean it up, the better it will look.
Something you can definitely apply to wedding portraits as well.
Absolutely. Cal always has to explain to couples that don't worry about Paul. He may stare at you a lot. He's not looking at you. He's just looking at the light on your face.
Right. He's studying you. Right.
Yeah. It's like I literally will look at someone's face and study it, and it's like I'm not looking at you at all. I'm looking at those lights of how the light's falling on your face. And another photographer I used to work for, Wes Bell, Canadian guy. I've always remember this one time, and I think we were in Ireland. I think it was Ireland. I can't remember if it was Ireland or Spain on a trip. I was his assistant. And we were on this beautiful beach. And he walked all the way to the end of the beach to this really dark corner under a load of undergrowth. It was completely dark, and took the picture there. Mm-hmm. We did the Polaroid. He pulled the Polaroid, and I just went, now I get why we're here. Mm-hmm. The light was just beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And when you get light like that, and when you learn to see that light, and I think a lot of people can't see it because they've never been trained to see it, because you really have to. It's not about light and dark; it's about the subtlety of how light is falling on a face or an object. When you attune to that and spot it, it can make so much difference in a portrait. When you put a bride in the right position in a scene and that light's just falling on her face perfectly, the job's done for you. Yeah. It doesn't matter what you say, just kind of make her smile. It's going to look great because that light's amazing.
Yeah, it's a skill that portrait photographers or wedding photographers have to develop to say, I'm going to sort of separate the humanity of this person. I'm looking at them as an object that is being lit, like a statue. Okay.
Like a still life.
Nothing personal, but I'm just going to treat you like an object for a minute.
One of I forgot to mention earlier. So Mike Skipper, my first teacher when I was about 18, 19. One of the things that made me a photographer was about lesson 2 or 3. We used to go in every week for 3 months. He gave a lesson, and he went, basically, Paul, anything. He was teaching a class of there must be about 15 of us. And he said, basically, anything can look good with good light. Literally anything in the world. And he said,
it's a great quote.
Apart from maybe, then he said, apart from maybe, I don't know, a milk bottle. And in England, we used to have milk bottles, like glass bottles to deliver the milk. He said, anything, maybe not a milk bottle. I went away, went home, found a milk bottle, took the most amazing picture of the light coming through this milk bottle reflecting on a surface. And I meant to find it for today because it's up in my loft somewhere, and I didn't find it. That's why the AGFA boxes are out, because I was looking for a couple of weeks ago. I was looking for it, but I took that in the next week and went, "Here you go, Mike." And he went, Okay.
I stand
Point
corrected.
made. I stand corrected. And that really was the moment when I went, you know what, Paul, you've got whatever it is it takes to be a photographer who can see things. You've got it. This is you can make a job of this
Yeah.
because you see things differently.
Yeah.
You don't see things like the rest of the people.
How do you see this image here with this? Is it a best man or a groom giving a speech?
This is the groom giving a
Okay.
speech. Best man next to him, bride next to him, guest on the left. Top table. Again, I'm probably on my knees. I might go up a little bit just to take this. Completely random moment. Completely could not plan this moment at all. I'm taking hundreds of pictures of him giving me a speech. For whatever reason, whatever happened, I have no idea what he said. But he suddenly
got a reaction.
Face. Yeah, and I probably didn't even see this when I shot it. This is probably an image that I probably saw back in the darkroom when I was processing it in Lightroom. And I just every time I look at this image, I was actually looking at this image earlier today with I was getting it critiqued by We Went Off Fearless. He was critiquing it for me, and I've actually made a couple of adjustments to it that I've never seen. It's about 4 years old, and he went, "Oh, why didn't you give it that minute?" It's like, really? Oh shit! Why did I never see that?
Right. Everybody has their own vision and biases when you look at any image.
Exactly. Yeah. But it's one of my all-time favorite images again because it's just magical. The best man's face on the right-hand side.
Priceless. Yeah.
It's priceless. There's no way on earth you could. If again, I come back to this fashion shoot. If you were to set this up for commercial shoot, to try and get them to do that, you'd spend days trying to get them to do that. How would you get that? You wouldn't even know what you were trying to achieve. It's just bizarre. And it's that spontaneity, that reality of that magic of capturing that moment for all time. That I love this image every time I look at it.
Yeah, it's a type of image too that you just know that the client will love this kind of image too.
Yeah, right? It's like what are you not going to like?
Yeah,
you're just gonna. The bride looks great. The groom and the best man look like complete idiots.
Yeah.
The maid of honor next to the bride is just laughing her head off. The other three at the end are laughing their heads off. You just know they're going to absolutely love it, and they're going to remember that moment.
They'll remember that moment. Yeah. Let's see. Let's look at another one. Looks like First Dance.
First Dance. Again, completely unposed. Slightly annoys me in the back of this image. There's three people on the left-hand side, all looking at their phones.
Yeah.
Which it's like modern.
Well, they're taking photos with their phones, right?
Yeah, well, they're taking pictures
like everybody else is.
I wish they had their phone down and I was seeing their faces look happy. They're clapping or something. But again, it's an unposed image. I'm always trying to get images like this during the first dance, getting a little bit closer, get the bride's face, just doing something magical. And again, it's that look on her face. She looks so blissfully happy in that moment. And during this type of shot, I'm taking hundreds of pictures. I'm following them around. I'm probably staying one side of them because I want the crowd in the background. But I'm kind of as they slowly turn around, I'm going click, 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 all the way around trying to get shots. And just to get that one perfect moment where her face is just in the right light. She's just got that blissful expression on her face. It just works with the fairy lights going up to the roof of the marquee. It's just magical. I just love that image.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people underestimate, the amount of thinking that goes into an image like this, which on its surface it's a fairly straightforward, simple image, even though the expressions are cut perfectly. But we have to take into account all of the elements of the lighting, the shadow, the background. The bokeh of the lights behind them, adding to the effect. There's lots of different elements that come together. That takes experience.
Looking at it now, it's like the fact that her eye line is in the level of where the fairy lights finish going across the page. It's like a horizontal line about almost 2/3 up, and her eye line goes through that perfectly. And the fairy lights come down to her eye line as well.
Yeah.
All those elements come together, and whether that's I've never considered myself a skillful photographer in the sense that I think of these things beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
I think of myself as an innately good photographer, that I have instinct for it, that I clearly see those things and instinctually react to.
I was going to use that word instinct as well, because and instinct comes with experience. I think it comes with there's some natural talent, of course, but experience is it just sort of feeds into the back of your brain, and you don't always know why you're doing something, but
absolutely. It's getting less important when you click the shutter, because now you've got like my Sony A9. I'm taking 10 frames per second.
Mm-hmm.
But back when a lot of these were taken, these were like a Canon 5D3 and a Canon 5D4. You had to time it. You had to time that when you click that shutter, and a lot of that timing was instinct. You didn't actually know you were pressing the shutter, but your body just knew to press the shutter.
Yeah.
So this shot is bridal makeup, totally unposed. I didn't ask her to pose the brush or anything like that. I've gone outside the building, looking through a window to get a bit of reflection going on.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually a really bad exposure. The dressing gown is actually blown out, so I've had to manipulate quite a lot in post to try and bring it out.
Mm-hmm.
There's also someone stood right behind her that I tried to darken down a little bit. But I just love the effect. The light on her face is just beautiful.
Yeah.
This is again. This was actually a wedding of a friend who Carol used to work with. Very ordinary girl. You wouldn't ever go, oh wow, she's stunning looking. She's pretty, but she's not stunning model. To make her like that look that good and make her look her full beauty, that I love doing. I used to love that with models. Models used to like working with me because I'd always make them look good. So they'd always like want to do shoots with me because it was like, oh yeah, because it's like I get pictures to use when Paul shoots me. And it's like, yeah, I want my women in my pictures to look absolutely amazing. So yeah, that's why I like that picture.
And a lot of that is you knowing where the best light is that you can capture that's already existing. And if that means going outside and shooting through a window, that's what you're going to do.
Yeah, and the shooting through a window was to give that extra element to it, just to give it a little bit of funniness, some strangeness to it, what was going on, and getting reflections.
Well, sometimes you don't have any choice either because of the
absolutely
the room.
But I think also it's about when you spot that image and knowing when you're looking at your own images of what makes a bride look good. Mm-hmm. So what angles will look good. Like I see a lot of pictures people shoot from underneath, looking up, and it's like, well, you're looking up the bride's nose. That you'd never shoot a fashion picture like that.
Yeah.
Why would you want to look up the bride's nose? That's just not an attractive angle.
Right.
You can get away with it in extreme circumstances. I've seen some pictures that just work because it's so unusual, but it's not a normal picture to shoot.
Yeah. So here's an emotional shot.
Yeah, so this is in a church during the middle of the ceremony. I think she's just walked down the aisle. They're probably just saying their vows or something, and she just breaks. And that moment, even this is kind of a strange one because this goes against what I just said, making her look pretty. But the prettiness in this is just the raw emotion.
Yeah.
I mean, she completely is broken in feeling that moment. She's so happy. She doesn't look happy, but she is so happy in that moment.
Tears of joy, yeah.
Yeah. It's one of those pictures where I really wish it had more in it. I wish I'd been able to get the congregation in it, but they're a long, long way away to the left. The couple was stood quite a long way away from the congregation, so there's nothing else I could put in the scene. Mm-hmm. They're kind of lonely. I could possibly have got the priest to the right-hand side, but that wasn't ezy either.
Although on the other hand, it does give you a nice clean background, and your eye goes right to her face. Yeah.
It's just it's an image that always stands out to me. That when explaining to people about emotion, that's what I want. I always say to couples, if you cry on your wedding day, please cry. You don't stop yourself. You don't need to get a tissue or something. Mm-hmm. I want to see you cry. There's nothing better than crying.
You also got blessed with some nice light on there as well.
There was a nice bit of light on there.
Yeah. That's something that can't control as a unposed photographer.
Completely. If they stand in a church and it's horrible lighting, you're just going, oh god, a bit more processing on this one.
I know.
So
here's a great expression too.
this shot's from last year, military wedding at a church, not too far from me at Sandhurst. Chinese bride, I'd never met the couple, didn't have much contact with this couple at all, just turned up, shot their wedding on my own. They came out with the swords. They did a funny thing with the swords where they blocked the couple, and it really spoilt the sword picture.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, why are you doing that, guys? I wish you wouldn't do that. But then she, after they'd done the sword, she walked forward and just did that. And I'm just backing up. I'm walking backwards away from her into the crowd. And that look is just priceless. That look of sheer joy. Just love it. Absolutely love it.
Yeah. I'm looking at all the other elements in it, and I see well, of course, the swords too, but the hidden person on the right with the cell phone and the Chinese characters on the back of her phone. That gives it some context, actually.
Yes, completely. They were Chinese. They were taking pictures of everything.
Because some people would be tempted to crop that out, right? But I don't mind it.
It's like the thing is I wouldn't crop that anymore because it's like I want the tip of the sword, so I can't really crop the swords anymore.
Right.
I don't really want to crop his sword out, and that element just adds another element. It's not. I don't think you need to make images too clean.
No,
it's like having a little bit of dirtiness in an image is good because it shows context of where it was.
Well, especially as a documentary approach, right? It's you got to expect some real life in there. Oh, I love the light on this one.
So I included this simply light.
The textures are great.
This is just the mother. I can't remember if it's the mother or the bride or the groom. They're just sitting listening to the speeches. It's not a post portrait. It's just a what's the word? An environmental portrait. As she was listening to the speeches, I saw the light. I took a picture of her. I probably took a few pictures. When I got it to processing, I was processing them and I thought, okay, I've got to try this in black and white. It brings out all the lines in her face. She's probably not the happiest with me because it's not going to make her look beautiful.
Right. It's not a glamour shot. It's not meant to be.
Exactly, because that light and that when you see this on a big screen, the silveriness of the light in there. There's so many tones going on. It's absolutely stunning, and it reminds me of printing back in the old days. Record rapid. Developing tray, seeing that print via, picking it up the next day and going, looking at a 16 by 12 print and going, oh my God, wow, look at those tones. It's just stunning. It's just a lovely image from a black and white perspective.
Yeah, I totally agree. I just fell in love with this image. And I'm thinking too, if you were in a studio setting up lighting on her face, it would have been really hard to have recreated that kind of lighting.
Yeah, but you probably wouldn't because you'd want to make her look pretty.
Yeah, right.
You'd probably
exactly.
You'd probably not like her like that.
Yeah, and that's the mark. That's one thing that makes weddings fun is to be presented with an opportunity like that you would never have anticipated.
Yeah, completely. You know, I didn't take that. When I took that image, I was not thinking, oh, this will make a great black and white image.
Right.
I was just taking a picture of the mum.
Right.
And it wasn't until I got to the darkroom that I went, okay, the light's really good there. I wonder what that looked like in black and white. Try it, and as soon as you convert to black and white, you go, whoa, okay, let me play with this. This is just going to be beautiful.
So here's looks like entering the ceremony. Entering the ceremony.
Right. So I love this picture. It's a venue I've shot at quite a few times. It's like Foyle Park. It's quite local to me. I know she's going to come down those stairs. I know she's coming down the stairs with her dad. You always worry, where do I need to be to get the picture I want of coming down the stairs? The light on the stairs is terrible. It's really, really bad because she's backlit and it's actually really dark on those stairs.
Okay.
So you're kind of thinking to yourself, oh, I really want the picture. Do I wait till she just walks down the aisle or do I try and get the stair picture? I went for the stair picture. And so all the elements, I just love the fact that I actually managed to get the elements I wanted in there. I wanted the chandelier. I wanted that ceiling. I wanted some guests either side looking. I wanted the moment when her dress looked good, that she's looking up, that she's not looking funny.
She's got a smile. Right?
I think she's got a bit of a smile on her. And then by also converting it to black and white, it works perfectly, but also that enabled me to manipulate it even more and lift her out a little bit and lift her dad out a little bit.
Okay.
And then manipulate the tones.
So the original image would have been, their faces would have been really dark then.
They're quite dark. Yeah, they're quite dark in there. They're quite dark in there. It's not the best lighting. It would not look like that off camera. That's the type of image that needs manipulation.
Yeah.
And that's probably got a lot of dodging and burning going on, a lot of pulling around in color channels to pull out certain colors. That's
the type of thing that clients don't see is how to turn a difficult image into a beautiful image.
Completely. I mean, that image in color would just be, oh, look, the bride's walking down the stairs.
Yeah.
Like, so what? There's nothing to it.
Here's your sense of humor.
This image is from December the 28th last year. Met the couple. I had already met the couple a long time before when they booked, but I went to the venue to meet them. And during our conversation, they said, so our daughter Connie is a real tomboy. She really hates wearing her dress. She's probably going to be really difficult on the day because she just hates her little flower girl dress. Completely hates it, loathes it, doesn't want to be in it. So little Connie sat there all morning looking bored stiff, playing games on her phone, watching videos, really not into the wedding at all. Mum was getting her makeup done and whatever, and just literally behind me where I am here. She eventually got her dress on, and she was doing various things. There was another flower girl who looked really pretty and was really happy and all joyous, just like a flower girl should be. And at a certain point, Connie just went over to that sofa and buried her head in the sofa. I dropped everything. I forgot the makeup. I'm done with makeup. I went over and I actually shot this through the back of a chair. I tried to be creative, trying to get it shot through a ladder back chair, which is the darkness top and bottom.
Okay.
Because I just wanted to add a different element to it and also crop out things. Like there's a TV in the background and I wanted to crop that out. Yeah. So I'm like trying to manipulate it so I can get it. And I shot the shit out of this. I shot so many frames of this.
She was not acting out for you for the camera. This was her.
Absolutely not. No. She was not acting for me at all. She was just miserable, buried her head in the sofa. She occasionally moved her legs around a little bit. She must have been there for maybe a minute, 2 minutes. And I just tried everything. I so wanted this picture. I wanted it so bad. And tried everything and then got back to the dark room and just started playing, looking for the images. And there's just this one frame and everything comes together. It's
nice to know the backstory too, because now it all makes sense, right?
Yeah. It's like I worried when so I entered this into a few competitions, and I worried when people saw it that they wouldn't really understand what the hell was going on. And it wouldn't make sense to them because to me, knowing that story is so powerful because story is everything. This is a picture of their daughter that in years to come they're going to be able to take the mickey out of because look, this is you on the wedding day, burying your head in the sofa.
Well, even if you misinterpret it, it could be like she's having a tantrum, or she's sleeping, or she's just upset that she has to wear a dress. Whatever the story is, it's definitely the action of a child. So it's a kid being a kid, right?
Yeah. And again, there's a lot of manipulation going on in this image. I spent a long time getting your eye to look exactly. I want to really show what I want to show in that image. I love the texture of the sofa. I love the texture of the carpet, the table, her dress, the socks.
Well, I'll say too, it's the mark of a good technician to be able to create an image like this, where the post-production is not blaring at you. It's not obvious. Like you see some that are so totally overdone, but this looks like it could have been shot close to out of camera.
Absolutely. I mean, that's again another lesson I learned very, very early on, was that you should never retouch. You should, with dodging and burning. I think again this comes out from Mike Skipper. The guy was a genius in my early years. That he said, when you dodge and burn, you shouldn't know that you've dodged and burned. If you can see that you've dodged and burned, you've done it too far. It should be like you didn't actually do anything, but it looks like that was just what you shot.
Yeah.
If you can see the touching, what's the point in retouching
Yeah.
it? You've created a monster.
Well, you're drawing attention to the retouching, and you're not drawing attention to the
Exactly.
image. Yeah. So I
completely.
probably got time for one more image. I want you to pick which one we're going to talk about. We got this one of the bride walking up, or we've got the getting ready shot with the little girl, or we've got the looks like the hug with the dad.
The hug with the dad is beautiful, but let's go for the first one.
Yeah, I like that one too.
Yeah.
There's a few things going on here.
Yeah, so this is a moment from a wedding earlier this year I shot on my own. It's a very, very small wedding, a local registry office. The room is not great. It's nothing special about the room. The guests all spread out. There's some empty chairs. The bride walks in on her own. She doesn't walk in with her dad or anything. I didn't have much, actually, I didn't even meet the couple. I'd never met the couple. I met the bride in the morning. First I met the groom was when I turned up at the venue. So I'd only known him for about 10 minutes by this stage. So she starts walking down the aisle, got myself into an obvious position to capture her. I knew the light got better as she got closer because there's big windows behind me.
Okay.
Most of the time he turned around, he was watching her. So why I decided to keep him in the shot, I don't know. But he was facing the other way. Yeah, instinct. Instinct, luck. You create your own luck.
Yeah.
He was looking the other way and he was watching her walk down the aisle, and all of a sudden he turned around and did that, and I was just like, and then carried on. And I kind of knew I might have that picture, but again, you just get on with the rest of the day. I never go back to my camera and go, oh, did I get it? Did I get it? No, I just carry on shooting, and there's too many other things going on.
Yeah.
And when I was processing the pictures, when I was looking at and culling the wedding, it was like I saw that, and it's like, okay, it's not perfect. I wish I'd left more space either side of them. There's barely any space. But that magic of his look and her look, she's looking at him, and you kind of, even if you don't know he's just turned round, it's his sister behind who's also turned around to look at him. You just know that he's emotional in that moment.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, and again, blessed with great light. So I knew in black and white that light would just punch out, because even though I've manipulated the image, the light's already there on her. I haven't had to clean her up. She's already got great light on her face. So you already know she's going to kick out from the background. So yeah, it's a special moment. It's, like I say, I'm always beating myself up because I wish it was better.
Oh yeah. Well,
I wish I'd left a bit more room. Why didn't I just shoot it a little bit wider, or an inch backwards?
We've all felt that. I think that's the nature of that, and that's the trade-off of a documentary reportage type of an approach, right? It's not going to be perfect because you're not going for perfection, right? You're not trying to create perfection. Right.
Exactly. It's so out of your control.
Yes.
If you're going to shoot unposed, then shoot unposed.
Yeah.
There's no point trying to pose it.
Yeah.
Just allow it to happen and accept you're going to miss some things, and accept that when you do get it, it's going to be matched. So even if this isn't perfect to me, it's still so darn good to me that I don't care that because I know that they will love this picture.
Exactly.
I know that they did love this picture, because they're never going to see an ordinary picture of her walking down the aisle and him doing nothing would mean nothing. It wouldn't have any emotional value.
Yeah.
Whereas that's everything.
Yeah. And the nice thing too is, as photographers, we always see, oh, I wish I had this a little bit different. I wish I did that a little bit different. But 99% of the time, the clients don't think that way at all. Oh, they look at the image and they just look at the faces, right? They go, "Oh, great moment."
Completely.
Yeah.
Completely.
We're our own worst critics sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, 99% of the time, your client probably isn't. This probably isn't their favorite image. They probably like the picture, some other random picture that you just looked at and didn't even think anything of, but they just like it because for whatever their reasons are.
That's true. That's so true. Well, Paul, it's been a real pleasure and just wonderful looking through your photos. And if anyone out there can reinvigorate or re-spark the love for documentary wedding photography, your work is definitely, yours and Carol's work is definitely a great example. And
thank you.
We're really glad that you're part of the ISPWP, and we're really glad that you can share some of your photos today.
It's been great chatting to you, Joe.
Yeah. So we'll
as we said in our earlier chats, it's like two old timers. We're kind of almost the same age. It's like we're like dinosaurs. We've been around.
Well, as soon as you start talking about film and darkroom, these younger photographers, their eyes sort of glaze over, like, oh, here they go again with the darkroom talk. All right, Paul. Well, it's great talking with you, and we'll have this up on YouTube very shortly. So thanks, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay.
It's been a pleasure.
All right. Talk to you later.
Bye.